Hello and welcome to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Lindsay Simsick and my best friend, Krista Williams, coming at you live.
Coming at you live. It's so nice to have you guys. If you're new to the show, welcome. We're so grateful you're here. We're OGs. We've been doing this for a long time now, and we love what we do. We love our community. We talk about relationships, spirituality, wellness, and we like to bring an authentic and fresh spin to everything we do. So grateful to have you here. And for the OGs that have been with us as OGs, we are glad to have you back.
We're just coming out of summer. Krista and I have been just having a blast going around touring, talking about our book. All of your feedback has been just incredible. And it's been so sweet to know that kind of like the podcast, the book has found you at the perfect time in your life. So just wanted to shout out everyone who has gotten the book. Thank you so, so much. If you haven't, it's available now in person and online, everywhere books are sold. It's called Almost 30. It's just been a joy.
It was amazing. Vancouver was my last stop that I did, and it was so beautiful. Vancouver's just green and lush and on the water, and it's stunning, and it's very chill vibes, I would say. I was getting ready in my room, and Danielle Laporte, who's a friend, was with me in my room as I was getting ready. And I had my outfits like on the bed, like my options. Usually I'll bring a few options just for backup. And she's like, first of all, you cannot wear the first two. She's like, it is very chill here. You cannot wear those outfits. She's like, put that one away, put that one away. She's like, I guess the last one will do, but
she's like, no rhinestones, sister.
No, honestly. She's like, the rhinestone denim set, we can't be doing that. She's like, put away the heels. I was like, cool. I'm going to wear the most casual thing that I have and rock it.
You're like, little bit of country though, right? Like,
honestly, I was like, I have cowboy boots. I was like, that's casual, right?
Every stop has had its like own flavor, which has been so fun. And we've had friends join us to be in conversation, which has been great. And it's like bringing back, old tour vibes, but super fun and intimate. It's been great to hug you all and honestly catch up. So many of you all have been listening for ever. And we appreciate it.
Yeah, it was like, I remember a few of the girls were like, I got married, I've had 2 kids, we moved, I did all these things. Like, there was just so much. It was so interesting. There was this one woman that I met, and she doesn't have social media. And so she's like, I don't have social media, I don't get on my phone, but I listen to 3 podcasts to kind of keep me attached and in the loop with humanity and like civilization. She's like, Almost 30 is one of them. And she listened to a podcast that we did a while ago with Natalie McNeil and her partner Yosef. And it was about play parties and then Dom sub. It was basically like sex is healing. It was just fascinating conversation. It was so interesting. And through it, she found, one of the play parties, and she said it's like changed her life.
No way.
Yeah. She's like, honestly, it's like saved me. Like, it's been such an interesting aspect of my life and my healing and my personality. It's just funny, like that led us to there. You just never know, like the butterfly effect, I guess. I'm using that word right. You just never know the effect that it has on people and how it reaches people in the ways that they need it.
Yes. I was talking to someone the other day, and they shared that they found Zach Bush on our podcast, and just how they just deeply, deeply resonated with him and just loved his work. And then like a month later, they were in, I want to say Nashville or somewhere kind of in the South or like middle-ish of the country. And she saw Zach Bush, like just walking. And she rolled down her window and she goes, Zach? And he's like, yeah. She's like, I just want to tell you, like, I love you. I've been so moved by your work, and I found you on Almost 30. And her husband was next to her like, dude, this is wild. Like you're meeting your idol. And what did he say? He's like, is this that Kundalini thing you've been doing? Like, is this the result of your like Kundalini awakening? And Zach like laughed. But yeah, it's fun to know that people find such incredible people through our show.
Yeah, they're always the best. And today is no different. So today we have Logan Ury on the podcast. So I first heard of Logan when she was on Diary of a CEO. And it was just such a fascinating conversation about modern dating, about the dating landscape. And, I'm in my dating era. I was married. I was with someone for 10 years, and I've been dating for most likely the first time in my life. And it's just such a different place and space. So sometimes I like to dip my toes into what's happening in the dating world and sort of see the themes. Logan's super powerful. She's an amazing speaker and author. She wrote her first book, How to Not Die Alone, a few years ago. She worked at Google as the co-head of the Behavioral Economics Lab. She is also the director of relationship science at Hinge, which is a dating app. And she's also written for the Gottman Institute, which is one of the most famous places where people find relationship and dating information. And she really is super helpful in the dating world, and she coaches a lot of women in dating. And so we talked about with her the gap between men and women. So this is a conversation that a lot of my friends are having, that I sort of hear in the zeitgeist on social media, that there's so many more good women than men. And I'm saying that as someone that loves men. It's hard for me to say that. It's hard for me to believe that. But this has also been discussed by people like Scott Galloway, who is talking a lot about how men are really struggling. And when we say that, we're looking at data and research that shows that women are now out earning men, that women are more college educated than men, that women have more social circles, that women are more emotionally intelligent. And so there is this gap that is happening between women and men. And I think a lot of women are experiencing that in dating. And because our audience is mostly women, we want to provide resources and support for making them understand or making them more educated about what's going on and why, and then also to support them in navigating this new modern dating world.
Yeah, and I think it was really insightful for me. I'm curious about your experience, just how we can like support men too, like having this awareness that this is potentially happening, with men in our lives, and kind of being aware of the origins of that, and, what would it take for them to, in a way, like catch up? Because I feel like we've done that in so many ways over many decades. But your experience dating, just high level, like, do you experience this, or do you feel like you attract a different texture of man?
I think in this world, I can't say that I noticed it mostly when I was on dating apps. So after I broke up, I was chose to be single for a year and not date or, do anything and heal during that time and recalibrate and enjoy just being alone. And then when I started dating, I started on the apps just to kind of experiment. I was traveling, and I did really notice it on the apps where I was like, whoa, there's a big discrepancy here between sort of what I'm looking for and what's available on the apps. But when I'm out in the real world, I think the people that I meet are really high quality. I'd say I do notice it the biggest discrepancy in the how much men are making. I have met quite a few men that I'm making more money than. And I think most of my friends are the breadwinners in the family and are making the money in the relationship. And then I do notice it as far as like emotional intelligence. I think that's just something that women are just so skilled in and so good at. And I think in my work, it's like a part of who I am and what I do in my work. So that's been a thing. I try to not get too caught up in it because I don't want to make it my narrative and I don't want to make it a part of my belief system. So I just am aware of what's going on. I think I hear it a lot more online and social media than I do in my world and in my life. And again, I just trust that there's going to be one person that's going to be the perfect fit for me. But I do think it's real. I do think it's true. I do think it's happening. And I do think that men are really struggling. I think it's a really hard time to be a man in America. I know that sounds really weird, but I think that men struggle more than we think. And just to note too, so Scott Galloway has a podcast that's called The Lost Boys, and he does it with someone named Anthony Scaramucci. And so it really focuses on the challenges that young men face today. And so if you want more information, you could hear it on that. But yeah, I notice it, of course, but I just try not attach to it too much.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of dating, you were telling me the other day a fun way that you prep for dates, and I thought it would be cool to share.
Oh yeah, so I am doing my thing. I'm on my little date game, and sometimes before dates, I think one of the most important things for me is just to get into my own energy. I use dating to get to know people, to love people, and also to really get to know myself for the most part. So I'll always use the dating container and experience to see, how am I being myself? How am I being inauthentic? Where am I not being as expressed as I could be? Where am I not being as myself as I could be? But in order to set myself up for success for that, there's a few things that I do with dates. So one of the first things that I do on dates is I go to the bathroom and I will check in with myself and my body. So I'll be like, okay, am I being myself? Am I having fun? Is this feel like reciprocal conversation, which rarely ever does, but does this conversation feel reciprocal? Do I feel regulated in my body? And just kind of like, check in on my nervous system, do tapping if I need. Something that I did the other day that was really, really helpful. So I had a really busy stacked day and I had to go to a date and I was driving in my car, and driving in LA, the traffic is just a little bit crazy. So I pulled over before the date and I did one of the activations. So Activations is an app. It's not like meditations. It's like a whole new experience, basically. And it's like a very active audio experience that you can do. It was created by Mimi Bouchard, who's been on the podcast a few times, but it's something I use all the time. But my favorite one to use is the Golden Energy Manifestation. And so it's 10 minutes. And basically, I just put it on in the car, pulled over on the side of the road safely, and did this really, really recalibrating, relaxing meditation that not only made me feel like myself and calm and regulated, but just really set me up for success. So that 10 minutes completely shifted the entire experience on the date. So highly suggest just taking 10 minutes, putting on an activation. The main character energy is a really beautiful one. And then the lucky girl energy affirmations one is always my favorite. So if you put those on, you can just really change your energy and your frequency, inherently then changing your reality. And it's really something that I found to be so helpful.
So we recently had Mimi on again, and we were like, can we please have a have a discount for our listeners, because we know that they're going to love it. So really cool. And if you're curious to try it, there's a special offer just for you guys at activations.com/almost30. You can find the link in the description as well. But you'll get an exclusive discount and a 14-day money back guarantee. So it's totally risk-free to see how it works for you. And as Krista said, like, these are incredibly easy to fit into your routine. I'm someone who doesn't have as much like time and space for like sitting in silence with my eyes closed. It's actually really nice to be able to stack these. So maybe I'm folding laundry and I'm listening to an activation. The other day I was about to have like a kind of a big meeting that was like making me a little bit nervous. And so I sat down, and I feel like they have activations for like anything I need. They're very specific, which I love. But I just popped on the pre-meeting walk to feel confident and focused. And I took a walk around the block just to, get in the right headspace. And it just really kind of like opened up the aperture for me of like how this meeting could go, rather than like all of the fears I had about what might be said or, how I would show up. So it was really, really powerful. So again, if you want to try activations, go to activations.com/almost30, and you have to type that URL into your browser. This does not work on the app itself. Activations.com/almost30, and you'll get an exclusive discount and a 14-day money back guarantee.
Beautiful. Love that app. I'm excited for you guys to listen to this. Definitely share this with a friend, especially your single or dating friends. This is going to be such a good conversation starter, such a good support, such a good way to understand this and really, kind of get tips and advice for how to navigate this new modern dating world. She's such a helpful resource for women that are successful, that have a lot going on, that are really powerful in finding love.
Enjoy, and we'll see you on the other side.
We'll see you soon.
If you're taking protein powder, you need to hear this. The Clean Label Project recently tested 160 top-selling protein powders in the US, and nearly half of them exceeded California's safety thresholds for lead. Yeah, that's right, lead. Not exactly what you want in something you're supposed to take daily to support your health, right? So to make it worse, most brands won't even share their test data, so you don't really know what you're putting in your body. That's why I'm obsessed with Puri's PW1 whey protein, and I love Puri just in general. Their products are obsessively tested and done right. You can scan a code on each one of their packages to basically see that batch, see the testing done, the breakdown. It's fascinating. Every single batch is third-party tested by the Clean Label Project against more than 200 contaminants. And Puri is actually the only protein brand in the US with the Clean Label Project transparency certification, meaning they put a QR code right on the label, like I said, so you can scan and see the results yourself. Each serving gives you 21 grams of minimally processed, clean, high-quality whey protein from pasture-raised cow's milk. There's no hormones, no GMOs, no pesticides. And I just love knowing I can take this daily to support my muscles and just my health in general without worrying about hidden junk. And personally, I'm obsessed with the bourbon vanilla flavor. It's not chalky, no artificial aftertaste. It's just smooth and delicious. So make sure your protein powder isn't hiding nasty chemicals. Switch to PW1. We know you'll love it as much as we do. We work with Puri on an amazing deal for you. So get 20% off, or if you choose the already discounted subscription, you'll save almost a third off the price. Here's how. Go to puri.com/almost30. That's PUORI.com/almost30 and use the promo code almost30. That's puri.com/almost30, promo code almost30. That's PUORI.com/almost30. And again, the promo code is almost30. Don't wait. Go grab the discount now. Did you know strength training during pregnancy can actually reduce your risk of gestational diabetes, give you more energy, and lead to a faster postnatal recovery? There's a lot of outdated misinformation when it comes to prenatal workouts, and that's why I'm so grateful for Evlo Fitness's new groundbreaking prenatal program. I cannot wait to do this the next time I'm pregnant. I know firsthand that working out and strength training that I did in my first pregnancy was just so helpful on all fronts. I felt really great during pregnancy, and I just had a really great recovery after giving birth. But I know that this program specifically tailoring to each week of your pregnancy is going to be the bomb. I cannot wait to do it. The program was created by Dr. Shannon Ritchie, a doctor of physical therapy and Evlo's founder and CEO, while she was pregnant. The classes are literally taught by Dr. Shannon week by week as she goes through the exact stage of pregnancy you're in. You plug in your due date and the app will drop you right into the week with classes tailored to your exact pregnancy stage. And it's just like, it's one of a kind. I love Evlo already. I have been doing their strength training programs for a long time, and I just feel incredible. So the fact that they have a prenatal program just excites me so much. I chatted with Dr. Shannon on the show a few weeks ago. She's actually pregnant right now with her second, and she shared that she's the strongest that she's ever been. I really wish I had this during my first pregnancy, but I'm excited to do it during my second one. And if you're looking for science-backed, joint-safe, and truly effective workouts for maintaining and even building strength through all 3 trimesters without breaking your body down, Evlo is for you. You can try Evlo free for 6 weeks. Use code almost30trial at evlofitness.com. It's completely free for 6 weeks. That's evlofitness.com and use the code almost30trial, almost30trial. Cannot wait for you to try.
So we were talking a little bit before about some of the discrepancies in dating where women are feeling like there's not enough good men and there's not enough men that are viable or great partners. And there seems to be what we'd call a masculinity crisis. And I know you talk about this, so I'd love to explore this because I know our community and audience are women that are struggling in dating. You know, some of them feel like there's not enough men that are doing emotional work or going to therapy or all of these things. So what is it that you're seeing in this space?
Yes, I'm very excited to talk to both of you about this and learn from you and what you're hearing from your community. I'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you a couple of the things that I've observed. So, I've been working as a dating coach for 10 years, and I've been working at Hinge as the director of relationship science for 5 years. So, I sort of have the one on one relationship with people where I'm hearing stuff. And then I also have the 10,000-foot view from Hinge. And so, for a long time, people have been saying, oh, there's no good guys out there. I feel like that's something that people just say in culture. Like if you go back to Sex and the City and dating in the 90s and rom-coms, that has been a constant thing that people say. But recently, as I've been looking into the data, I feel like there is something there where over the last 100 years and specifically the last 50 years, women have really gained so many opportunities. And that's fabulous. And I feel like I am a recipient of those opportunities and I'm very grateful for it. But what's also been happening is that women are really leading in a lot of areas of education, employment, and it feels like men have not caught up. And so, for example, in high schools in the US, 70% of valedictorians are women, which is amazing. In colleges, in a few years, 2 out of 3 graduates will be women. So, all of these things are fantastic and we should celebrate them, but we also need to think about the impact that that has on dating. So, in dating, there's something called hypergamy, where women want to date someone who's equal or higher status than them. So, for most of human history, that hasn't been that hard because women were not allowed to have those opportunities to leave the home and make money and get educated. So, most men were of a higher social status or economic ability. But now, as women are really catching up or surpassing men, there's just way fewer men that are their equal or higher partners. So, if you think about it, if 2 out of 3 college graduates are women, then half of those women who graduate will not have a guy who is a college graduate for them to date. And so we're really in this moment where we have to figure out what are gender roles right now, what are women's expectations for dating, and probably what are the things that men and women both need to do to kind of catch up. And from what I'm seeing, it feels like dating hasn't caught up with the data. So women are making in many areas as much or more than men, but then they still feel like, well, they want the man to be the provider and to split the bill and all of that. And that's been something that was taught to them since they were little is if he likes you, then he'll pay for the date. If he likes you, he'll be the provider. Well, what happens in a world where men are less able to do that? And similarly, for men, if your only role is to be a provider, but now we need more from you, we need emotional intelligence, then are you prepared to do that? And so I feel like there's so much to this conversation. I feel like I'm only at the beginning of really doing this research, but it feels like such a critical moment because we just know that these couples aren't forming. The marriage rate in the US it's nearing an all-time low. Fertility has dropped 20% over the last 20 years. And so this really is having an impact. Used to be sometimes people didn't have kids because they felt like they couldn't afford it. Now they're actually not having kids because those couples aren't forming. And so this really feels like it's bigger than just dating. It's really about the future of humanity.
Yeah, I'm curious just, digging into it more. So it almost feels like men at a certain point felt like paralyzed, where it's like, okay, so what does it mean about me if the women around me are, leading and doing the most and earning more? And then also paralyzed by the fact that they're unable to maybe have the language around expressing themselves emotionally or like being at the level that they feel like women want them to be at. Would that be true? Like, I'm just trying to figure out, like, I guess the root of that paralysis. Like, why aren't they motivated to like take the next level of lead?
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what
I
mean?
think there's a few things at play. One of them, and this was talking to a guy friend of mine who's interested in this stuff too, is he's like, imagine your whole life you were told that you had to catch a tiger, and that tiger was being a provider. And so you worked really hard towards that. And then all of a sudden, when you were like of the age to find a mate, they were like, oh no, you actually need to catch a lion. And a lion is emotional intelligence and emotional support and vulnerability and all these other things. He's like, we weren't taught how to do that. We don't know how to do that. We don't have the skills for it. And perhaps even harder, it feels like oftentimes women say, oh, I want a guy who's emotionally vulnerable.
Right.
But I think from digging into the research and talking to a lot of people, it feels like what they're saying is they want a guy who's emotionally supportive. So when they're going through something, the guy can support them in it, but not actually vulnerable and say, I need support too. And
Very
so
true.
in the survey that I ran, one guy wrote in and he said, I feel like the women in my life would rather see me die on a white horse than fall off of it. Like they don't want to witness my moment of vulnerability. And there's a quote from Brene Brown where she says, we beg men to let us in. We want them to be vulnerable. But the moment that they are, we can't stomach it. And so that's why I think there's also an interesting element of like, why is this happening for men, but also what are women doing? And I think in some ways, generalizations here, it's like, oh, I want them to be more open, but we actually still want them to be like, quote unquote, masculine and strong.
I completely agree. And I find myself going very psychological with this because it feels like there is so many different layers of sort of what's happening there. And And in one way, I feel so much for men and the struggles that they're going through and the challenges that they're in. And especially in that where it's like, be vulnerable, and then they are, and we kind of switch on them and we're like, this actually doesn't work for us. We need you to be strong. But I'm just curious, going back to the beginning where you're kind of sharing the discrepancies of how women now have so many more opportunities, we've created more wealth. Why in such a short time were we able to do that and now men are behind? Like, if they've had so much time, and I'm not someone that's so like, I very deeply respect and love men, but I'm kind of confused if they had so much time to get ahead and then we've had a very little time to create so much waves that, like, why are they so behind?
I have had the same question. So the person who's really done the best research on this is Richard Reeves.
Yeah.
And then Scott Galloway has popularized a lot of the stuff from Richard Reeves' work. And I think they're both putting amazing stuff out there. So I kind of had the same feeling and the same question that you're asking, because Scott Galloway says things like, oh, schools are so feminized now. And so women are doing so much better in school. But I'm like, who were schools built for? They were
Yeah.
built for men, and they haven't really changed. So I think there is like some tension there and some confusion. Some of the stuff that Scott talks about is lack of male role models. And so like increasingly a lot of men in the US, in the UK, around the world are growing up without a male role model in the home. And so it's not clear to them, how to show up as a man, how to show up as a respectful man. And Scott talks about how there's way fewer male teachers. And so it feels like in a lot of ways, men are not being taught by other men in society how to be men. And we think of men as being stronger, but actually the research shows that in many ways they're sort of more delicate than women. So there's research on if women grow up in a single parent household versus men, the women have like pretty similar outcomes versus the men have worse outcomes, and similar things in foster care that the men in foster care tend to do much worse. And so there's this idea that some children are like dandelions, and any environment that they grow up in, they're going to do decently well. And some kids are like orchids. They really need a particular amount of sunlight and nurturing and water. And some of the research shows that young men are actually more similar to orchids in this environment, where they do need a particular environment in order to thrive. And so I think we have many different things that are happening. One really good set of data on this is this new report called the Lost Boys Report that just came out in the UK in March. And it's showing that boys 16 through 24 are really falling behind. And they said that 1 in 7 of these young men are NEET, which is not in education, employment, or training. And so these are people who are really like falling out of society. And so what's really on my mind is, if we're at 1 in 7 now, how does that project out to the future? And women who already say there's not enough good guys, or the guys I go out with want free therapy, and they're not kind of at the same level I am, and they're not able to be a partner, then what's going to happen when like this generation of men that's even falling more behind is going to be those women's potential partners?
Yeah. Something you said just made me kind of think for a moment, the education piece where schools were built for men. And I obviously know that is true, but I'm wondering about the structure of school and how it might not, for men in particular, be the way in which they're built to learn. So just having a young boy now, like just kind of very in the beginning stages of learning about this, but how they learn through play and using their bodies and movement and roughhousing. And I'm just thinking about our modern society and how men now, I don't think are that much, like they're not encouraged to use their hands, use their physical bodies. Like maybe they go to the gym, okay, maybe they get a pump in with their friends, but like there's not this like broader sense of like using their bodies to learn, to grow, to be in community. And I think that's part of like purpose building in a way. We're so on our phones, we're at desks, we're kind of in these little squares, I don't know, almost like men are muted in a way in this modern society. So I'm just curious what you think about that.
Yeah. So first of all, I'll just say I'm not a historian, so I don't have like expertise in all of this. And I more come at this from the dating perspective, but I can give kind of my non-expert view on all of this, which is that I feel like the education system is going to have to change a lot in the next few decades. Like, I think with AI, like so many of the jobs that are taught, so many of the jobs that are taught in college, like those jobs may not exist or they may not exist in the same way. And it feels like schools just haven't really been updated in many years. Like they still have the system, like, dating back to raising good factory workers, where it's like when the bell rings, you move to the next class. And so I I don't know how to solve this, but I definitely feel like education in general is ripe for disruption.
Mhm.
There's a school that I spoke to a young woman at, and it's called the Alpha School, and it's in Austin.
Oh, I've heard of
And
it.
I- they basically have a few hours in the morning of education, and a lot of it happens like self-paced, and apparently it's like backed up by AI. And then they spend a lot of the rest of the day doing practical skills or becoming an expert in a topic. And so, like, one of the things to graduate from this high school is you have to be able to build this piece of IKEA furniture. And there's like other kind of life skill stuff that they teach there. And I think that's really cool because it just feels like most people that graduate from high school feel like they're missing a lot of key skills, and they're probably missing a lot of key skills for what the economy is about to become with AI.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I hear everything you're saying, but I'm still kind of missing where is it that the fathers are not giving the boys like because what is actually happening where the boys are not being able to provide are not being provided with the environment where they're growing those skills that are in support of the type of relationship templates that I think we're stepping into. And I think women are sort of leading the way. And I do think women need to take responsibility for sort of the over functioning they do in relationships, sort of always moving the goalpost, you know what I mean, type of thing. Where I think what I've also come to find too is that women are also expecting men to be like women, where we're expecting them to hold us and relate to us in the same way women are. So what do you see in that
Yeah,
way?
no, I totally hear your question. I wish I had more expertise
I
in that.
know.
I feel like I'm not the expert in the like, how did we get here from the boys thing? I
Totally.
more have the expertise in
Yes.
dating.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, what I can say around that is one thing that I'm hearing about a lot is that men were taught that they needed to be the provider. And then now women are saying, I can also be the provider and I can make, 50-50 in our relationship or a little bit more than you. So, what else are you bringing to the table? And so, emotional intelligence is the new currency in dating. And the thing is, if you were a guy who was not taught that and you don't have those skills, then you're not really ready to show up in that way. And so I think women are saying, I need more from you. You can't just be like the strong, silent type that comes home and has a whiskey and I've prepared you dinner. What else are you bringing to the table? But the guys don't have these skills. And I feel like our society hasn't really taught them that. So there's all this research around how even starting at a young age, like when kids are 3, parents talk to their girls with more emotional language than boys. We have all this stuff like boys don't cry. I think that we've sort of taught men that there's really only one way to be a man, that it's to be strong and it's to be silent and it's to not share your feelings. And then all of a sudden we've kind of changed what we want from them, but they haven't been taught that. And then going back to what I said, when they are vulnerable, we sort of shame them for it. And so I feel like we're just so early on in this conversation figuring out how should we be raising men differently? And for the men who are already raised, how can we make them better partners for the women who are looking for them? And so I think that there's work for both sides to do. So I think for women, it's also changing expectations. So I don't think that it's about settling. Women hate that word in my coaching. That's always like the S word.
Yeah.
But I had dinner with a friend this week who she works in Hollywood. She makes a good living and she met this guy and he makes about a quarter of what she makes. But he's so steady. He's so great. He's a great dad to their dog. He's going to be a great dad to their future kids. And she's like, I can afford my lifestyle and I want him to be a part of it. And I'm okay with him making less. But a lot of women I talk to don't feel that way. They want the guy to pay for the first date. They want the guy to make as much or more than they do. So I feel like if women want to continue to succeed, which I think they do, then they also might say it's less important that the guy be the solo provider or make as much as me. And then from the male perspective, I think there's a lot of work to do to catch up. I mean, listen to some podcasts about dating, go to therapy. My husband's in a men's group. I think that that is an amazing way for men to kind of help each other get stronger and to have a safe place to be angry and to be sad and to say like, this is really hard and I feel like I am useless, and just have people kind of there to support you as well in a masculine way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that we are where we are right now and things feel hard. But I think that if we change our expectations of what we want and what the other person can give us, I do feel like we can find our way back to each other.
Yeah. Okay, so let me paint the picture. Growing up, my comfort foods were always the same. Okay, I remember them vividly. Warm Hawaiian rolls at family dinners, a bagel on a Sunday morning slathered in cream cheese, and of course, giant bowls of noodles. I loved this like cheesy sauce that I used to get at the grocery store. But the problem is, as I got older, those foods didn't always love me back. That's why I am obsessed with Hero Bread. It lets me keep my favorites without the sacrifice, and my family loves them too. Their Hawaiian rolls are my number one. They're soft and pillowy, exactly how I remember them. Delicious. Their bagels, so good. My son also loves them. And these products have 17 to 19 grams of protein with only 1 gram of net carbs per serving. I am blown away. And now, Hero noodles, they're here. Honestly, been a game changer. They've got 12 grams of protein, 5 grams of net carbs, 0 grams of sugar, and 32 grams of fiber, plus 60% fewer calories than typical noodles out there, which means yes, pasta night is officially back in rotation over here. And no one at the table can even tell the difference. My husband did not tell the difference. What surprised me most is the texture. I thought healthier bread or noodles would taste dense or cardboardy, but Hero Bread is fluffy and chewy and satisfying. The noodles are yummy. It feels indulgent, but it totally fits with my health goals, whether that's more protein, more fiber, which I am on a fiber kick, or just having meals that like are incredible and also healthy. And they don't just have like typical bread, they have tortillas, bagels, dinner rolls. And they have exciting drops, like batch drops, like the 2 gram net carb croissant, which oh, like I'm speechless over these. I got to try them once and now it has a 23,000 person wait list. Okay. I'm signed up for the next one. The bottom line is Hero Bread means no compromises, just delicious bread, rolls, tortillas, bagels, and now noodles that give me everything I love about my comfort foods, but with 0 grams of sugar, high fiber, and ultra low net carbs. Hero Bread is offering 10% off your order. Just go to hero.co. That's hero.co, hero.co, and use the code almost30 at checkout. You know, people think podcasting is just talking into a mic, but let me tell you, my brain does not shut off when I turn off the mic. Between planning episodes, researching topics, you know, just thinking about the business. Sometimes my sleep gets disturbed, and lately it has been. And I have been leaning on my Beam Dream Powder. It's incredible. I got introduced to Beam's Dream Powder last year, and my sleep has just been so phenomenal when I take it. Dream is an all-natural sleep blend made with science-backed ingredients like reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin, all designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next day grogginess, just really deep sleep that helps you actually feel good in the morning. So since adding Dream to my routine, I am finally sleeping through the night, if my son lets me, without tossing and turning, without my mind running. I just wake up actually feeling refreshed, not groggy, not exhausted, just ready to take on the day. And I'm so thankful. And I'm not the only one. Beam has improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, and 92% of users surveyed reported better sleep and waking up refreshed. And honestly, what I love most is Beam is an American company built and run right here. So when you support them, you're backing real people making great products the right way. Plus, for a limited time, Beam is giving our listeners their best offer yet, up to 40% off. Unbelievable. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/almost30 and use code almost30 at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/almost30 and use code almost30 at checkout for up to 40% off.
Do you feel like, the women who are really successful and they find men that they feel compatible with, but that like money piece is just different than what they had expected? Say they're making a quarter of what they make.
Yeah.
Do you think the desire for that, part of that is the need for when they do say have children or kind of want to flow in and out of their life, where it's like, there's going to be a season of my life where I'm not going to be going as hard because I'm, pregnant or having kids or whatever. Like just that cyclical nature of life and wanting kind of the stability, the masculine stability to like hold that. Do you feel like that's kind
Yeah,
of part
I
of
mean,
it?
that feels totally valid to me. And it's like, I totally understand why somebody would want to have a partner who makes as much or more than they do. It's like, life is hard, things are expensive, there's no safety net. Like,
Sure.
I think it's completely reasonable to want to have as much money or resources as possible, especially pre kids. And I think that that's a valid concern. But for women who are saying, I can't find a partner, and they also have that deal breaker, I would say to them at the end of the day, like, what is more important to you? Would you rather have no partner and not have kids with someone, or have a partner that makes less than you? And so I think it's like, in an ideal world, like, I totally understand why everyone would want as many resources as possible to have like an easier life. And I think that's completely valid. But I think if we're at a stage now where this hypergamous dating, somebody who is, as much or greater than you in terms of some of these financial markers or social status, if it's not possible for a lot of people to find hypergamous mates, then I think people have to make some compromises. So I think the instinct is valid. I get it. I'm
Yeah.
not like, why would you want more money? Everything, of course you would. But if you really want to find partnership and you do make a good living, then is that an area where you can compromise? And can you instead double down on things that really matter, like, emotional intelligence, or the person's loyalty or kindness, or the fact that they would be a great husband or father? And so can we start to separate out some of those traits from just ability to be a provider?
100%.
I'm going to do 2 questions, but you're a genius, so I know you'll get them. The first one is, I'm curious how men feel about that sentiment when you share it. So it's like telling the women not to settle, but negotiate what they're looking for. If men feel a type of way, if they feel offended, if they feel like, how do they feel having
Wait,
heard
sorry,
that?
when they feel which way?
So basically, do men feel offended when you're like telling women like you should negotiate what you want and you should lower the standards of what you want? Do they feel a type of way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these conversations are very heated for people.
Yeah.
Like, ever since I've started talking about this topic, I've gotten more trolling than I've ever gotten before. And that's just like new for me, because I feel like, for the last however many years, I've just been like talking about dating.
Yeah.
But suddenly when you start talking about gender, or you start talking about like men needing to step up, like, I'm just getting horrific trolling. And so I'm definitely sort of poking the bear here. And I'm going to assume that these trolls are men based on what I'm hearing. But I do think that this is like a really hard conversation.
Yeah.
I think talking about gender in general is hard. In my first book, I barely talked about gender at all. I only had one section, and it was basically like, if you're a woman who wants to give birth to your own biological children, the fertility clock is real, and you have to plan in this way. But otherwise, I was like, here's the psychological things that are impacting why you're single. Whereas now I'm like, I truly do see polarization of men and women. So men and women, traditionally people voted along racial lines, right? And then now a lot of people are voting along gender lines. So in the last election, you saw way more women voting for Kamala and way more men voting for Trump. When it comes to going to church, all of a sudden, for the first time in American history, more men than women are going to church. Think about the podcast, right? Like, how many men are listening to Almost 30 versus how many women are listening to Theo Vaughn, or, some of these other shows. And I just think that if you have people that are moving farther and farther apart, then when it comes to dating and mating, you just have a wider chasm to overcome.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And then the second, and that all makes so much sense. And I'm grateful that you're bringing this conversation. And I can even feel myself it is interesting because I can feel myself having my own little moment with it where I'm like, well, why aren't the men, because I think there's an aspect of me as a woman that feels like by my own, maybe unconscious choosing, I'm doing the most, where I'm like, I'm making the money. There's that part of women that does a lot, that can overfunction, that then feels like they need to be met in that way. But my second question I wanted to ask was more so related to if we're working with women on not negotiating or settling, but sort of just kind of redefining what their values are and what they're looking for. How do you support them in going about that?
Yeah, I think that is like really the essential question,
Yeah.
probably for our conversation. If your audience is a lot of women, which is like, I just have so much empathy for these women, and I'm married, but I'm always talking to women who are single and looking for love. And that's like what motivates me to do this work, is that I'm really like, what happens to these amazing women who have done everything? They were great students. They worked hard. They got good grades. They got a good job. They make money. They, support their parents. They work out. They just really have tried everything. And then they're like, I just can't find my match. And so then I feel like, well, what can I do to invest in men so that there are more matches for them? And so it's like, I'm sort of talking about helping men level up, but like selfishly, a lot of my desire is to have just more great men for the great women that I know. And that happens to me everywhere I go. People are like, oh, I know so many great women. Do you know anyone for this? I'm like, no, I have the same problem. So we're like all looking for these great men. And not that there are none, like I work with plenty of great men, but it just does feel like something's off. And so kind of getting more specific to your question, I think that for them, when I work with people in a coaching capacity, we often talk about like what matters for you and what are your goals. And so for that woman on an individual level, I'd say like, really, what are you looking for? Like, how important is marriage to you? How important is long-term partnership? How important are kids? What are the qualities you're really looking for? And so I'd help them figure out, separate from money, like what really matters to them. And then maybe there's something where it's like, humor is so important. Like humor is how we deal with hard moments. Humor gets you through, or intelligence, kindness, compassion, like getting along with your family. And can we sort of raise those on their list so that when they're evaluating potential partners, they can still care about money. They can still want someone who can help support the family, but can we help in their mind see those things as even more important, so that if they meet someone who makes less than them, they're seeing them as the whole package, and that we're kind of deprogramming them from, find the richest husband or the 6'5" finance blue eyes guy. And so, I think this conversation's hard because people don't like compromising. They don't like settling. They don't like being told like, well, other people get this, but you can't. But at the end of the day, if you're single and you want partnership, like I want to be pragmatic about how can we make that happen.
A lot of people, when they're dating, they have a list,
Yeah.
of qualities, or, whether it's surface level or deeper, that they want in a person that they want to date. I guess, what is the benefit to having a list? What is the detriment to having a list? How can that kind of lead you down a path that could potentially be a little funky and distorted? I was dating for a long time, and I feel like my list changed over the years from a bit more like surface level things to like more feeling, like how I wanted to feel. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, I love what you just said about how your lists changed over time. So through the work that I do, I often have people who come to my office or Zoom in with me, and they're like, I know exactly what I want. I just need your help finding them. And for them, they're so clear that they've been dating for a while, so they know what they want. I actually have the opposite view, which is sometimes when you've been dating for a while, this so-called type that you're going after isn't actually the type that's going to serve you. And the work I want to do with them is not locating the 5'7" skinny redhead tennis player, but it's, finding a woman who is really going to fit into their lives and, help them create the world that they want. And so I often tell people, you think you know what you want, but you don't. And so for people's lists, I want them to take off some of those superficial qualities like height. I feel like height kind of goes back to the money conversation. It's like, am I saying that height doesn't matter? Am I saying that people are equally attracted to people of all heights? No, like
No.
these are real things. This is part of like the reality of dating. But what I'm saying is I think that we've given undue importance to them. So one of the statistics that I love to share is that a lot of women set their height filter at 6 feet. And then they are actually blocking off 86% of men in the US who are under 6 feet.
That's
So
crazy.
if you only can see 14% of men based on your height filters, and then you walk around and you give me your phone and you say, where's my husband, Logan? Where is he? It's like, well, he's not even allowed like into your phone. You're like, your bouncers on your app are like blocking him. And so I feel like the same thing kind of goes back to the money conversation. So it's like, you can say like, I'm more attracted to people who are taller, but once you start setting your filter at 6 feet, you're missing out on like great guys who are
Yes.
5'10", 5'11", 5'11 and a half. Are you really telling me that you couldn't make a relationship work with them.
And I think it's the height thing is so interesting, even though it seems a little trivial. But like when I started to open my aperture to men who were like a little bit shorter than my like 6 foot, standard,
Yeah.
which is probably accurate where it was, I was like, dang, there is like a quality to these men who are like, say, 5'10", 5'11", who like, I could wear heels with and be the same height. That like there's a difference in confidence and the way they embody themselves, like that actually I was attracted to over like someone who's like 6'5", like just so full, that's a generalization. But I was like, wow, like there's aspects to the character and the personality that I was missing out on.
Yeah. And I love how you said open the aperture. I think that that's a great way to say it. And it's like, as I said, people don't like this idea of settling. So how can we repackage this to just say, like, you don't know what you're missing out on. And so if you say, I can only date someone who works in one of these industries, well, what about the great guy who doesn't work in those industries? I can only date someone of this height. If you met a guy at a bar and you talked for the whole night and he stood up and he was 5'9", would you really not give him your number? And I think that we've all just become a little black and white in this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, just because you can set a filter on an app to say, this is the height that I would like, I don't think people understand the implications of that, which is like, you're really filtering out a lot of potential partners. And so as people get older, they often feel like, well, I'm closer to knowing what I want. But I feel like in a way they get more stubborn and more closed-minded and they close the aperture. So a lot of the work I do with them is to say, let's go through your relationship history. Let's talk about the guy that you dated in college where it wasn't the right time, but he was really great. What side of you did he bring out? How did you feel around him? How did he fit into your family? Kind of helping people see that marriage is not hiring someone for a job where they have to have a certain set of resume skills. It's truly, who do you want to sit with on a Tuesday night? Who do you want to raise kids with and talk about hard things with? And how does somebody make you feel? And so I think if we move away from the checklist, move away from the resume, move away from the job interviews to, do I feel like my best self around you? That is just a completely different way to date.
It's beautiful. In my dating process, I don't have a list anymore. And it's been just liberating to kind of open, like she said, the aperture of like who I'm calling in and who I'm experiencing and just sort of see what my type is. Because I also think we're kind of programmed into a type, especially I grew up in a small town in Ohio. So kind of the people that you are around just became like a specific type. When we talk about online dating and kind of that, putting the filters on, what would you suggest for women to how they can move about online dating if they're on apps like Hinge? How can they support themselves in not going off the resume or the list on an app?
Yeah. So actually the best way to really invest in your dating and the profiles you're looking at is to invest in your profile itself. And so your profile is going to really lead the conversation. And so I'll give you some of the key tips for like the best Hinge profile. So you want to have a really clear picture of yourself. I call it a headshot. It doesn't have to be a professional headshot. That just shows, here's what I look like. You don't have to do any guessing games. There's no filters, no sunglasses. Then you want to have a variety of pictures. So one with you doing an activity that you love, one with friends and family, and one that's a full body shot. And then things you want to avoid are any photos that have smoky in them. Gym selfies don't perform well. And also those photos, I call them Where's Waldo ones, where it's like 10 kind of bachelorette girls and you're like, which blonde in a row is she? Those are just frustrating to people. And then Hinge has these prompts, which are these icebreakers. And the best thing to do is to really create a hook where someone can respond to it. So you might say, I love podcasts. I'm always listening to one. What's your favorite podcast? And by asking a question, it makes it so easy for someone to respond to that because they can just say, oh, I love this podcast. Have you heard of it? What are your favorites? So it's like making the job easier for other people by setting them up.
Yeah.
So one way of doing a hook is to do a question. I also really like hot takes. So, in San Francisco where I live, I might say, Delfina has the best pizza. And then somebody will write back, flour, water, or bust, something like that. And so I love the idea of like putting out a strong statement and then somebody can like respond to it. And then I feel like that also can lead to a fun date because I had a friend who did this in New York around donuts and then they like went on like a donut tour for their first date.
Yep.
So those are ways to really set other people up for success in talking to you. Another thing I would teach people is that there's things that you can learn about somebody from an app and things that you just have to meet them in person to learn. So for example, in my dating class, I talk a lot about attachment theory. And then people say like, okay, this is great. How do I find a secure guy on an app? And I'm like, you won't know from his profile if he's secure or not. And even if he puts securely attached, I'm like, is he? Like, do we even know? Can you just like proclaim that?
Yeah.
And so I think having a list of things that you need to just find out in person can take some of the pressure off. So it's like what you can learn from an app is like what they look like, where they live, maybe what they're into. You can text a little or jump on the phone to see if you have banter. But most of the hard stuff, just you need to get on a date.
Yeah.
And I think people need to get on these dates faster than they think. So at Hinge, we found that after 3 days of dating, 3 days of messaging on the app is actually the right amount of time to set up a date. And so it can be really tempting to be like, I need to know more about them. I need to vet them. I need to talk to them for weeks. It's like, certainly, like, I want to see if you have a connection, but get to the date sooner. And then in person, find out a lot of this stuff. Like, how do you feel around them? Do you have chemistry? Are you curious about them? And I actually have this list called the post-date 8. And it's 8 questions to ask yourself after a date that help you go from the really evaluative mindset, are you good enough for me, to really the experiential mindset. Do I like being around you? And so these are questions like, how did I feel in my body around you? Did I feel relaxed? Did I feel stiff? Did I feel captivated or bored? Did you make me laugh? Did I feel attractive in your presence? And you're sort of training your brain not to think, what's their job? Who's their family? But really training your brain to see, when I'm with them, how do I feel?
You know what used to trip me up with money? Overdraft fees. It always felt like one step forward, 2 steps back, or those moments when I'd be waiting for a paycheck to hit, just trying to stretch what I had for a few days, honestly. It was exhausting. I actually wrote about this in our book, my finance chapter. I made some mega confessions of my finances from my 20s. But this is why I love Chime, because it feels like banking that actually works for me. And I'm excited for you to try it. When you set up direct deposit through Chime, you get access to fee-free features like free overdraft coverage, getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit, and more. And when every dollar counts, that really matters. I choose Chime, and you should too. One of my favorite parts is the peace of mind. Real-time transaction alerts, daily balance updates, and knowing I got access to over 47,000 fee-free ATMs nationwide. And with qualifying direct deposits, you're eligible for free overdraft up to $200. No surprise charges, no stress. And just like having that, daily updates. This is what I'm talking about when it's like we have to look at our finances. It's one of the first unsexy steps to really getting it together. And so this has really, really helped me. To date, Chime has spotted members over $30 billion. That's progress. So make everyday purchases count with Chime's secured credit builder Visa credit card. Work on your financial goals through Chime today. Open an account at chime.com/almost30. That's chime.com/almost30. Chime feels like progress.
Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Spot me eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Timing depends on submission of payment file. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs. Bank ranking and number of ATMs according to U.S. News and World Report 2023. Chime checking account required.
Okay, so lately I've been giving my closet a little glow up, and honestly, Revolve has been my go-to for nearly all of it. It is just about to be the fall season, and I love that whether it's a night out, a wedding, or just my everyday run around the city, but still want to look put together vibe, Revolve has me covered. I have used them throughout our tours, interview processes. It's been just an incredible place for me to get looks that I feel confident in, that really like express my style in a unique way. And I love most how easy it is to shop on Revolve. The curated edits make it so simple to find exactly what I need without endless scrolling. That's the worst. Vacation looks, concert outfits, or even just elevated basics. Plus, they seriously have everything. Over 1,200 brands and over 100,000 styles with new arrivals daily. And the recommended for you picks are actually spot on with my style. I'm kind of freaked out. It's kind of cool. My current favorites, okay, I just want to give you like an insight into my cart, like what I just got. So I got I got the cropped sweater from Fear of God Essentials. It's like this really beautiful green color, great for fall. Nice big oversized sleeves, so cute. I also got the crew sweatshirt from WAO. It's just like a very simple basic, but I think I can like dress it up, dress it down, be my like kind of chic casual that I like. Oh, and I got the new Dunk Low sneaker from Nike. It's a cacao wow and coconut milk colors. Okay, so picture like that brown and cream. It is screaming fall. I'm so excited. So I am getting all of my wardrobe pieces this fall from Revolve, and I highly recommend. Okay, you are going to discover brands on Revolve, which I have many times over. I just discovered Helsa, which I love. I love Norma Kamali. She's on there. And guess what? Best part, whether it's a weekend getaway, a big night out, or just a little style refresh, your dream wardrobe is just one click away. It is so easy to shop on Revolve. Head to revolve.com/almost30. You can shop our edit and take 15% off your first order with code almost30. Fast 2-day shipping, easy returns, easy returns, which is awesome. And it's literally the only place you need to shop from. That's revolve.com/almost30 to shop our favorites and get 15% off your first order with code almost30. Offer ends October 12th. So happy shopping.
I want to talk about the like first date experience because I think some people will say, I'm going to know on the first date. Other people are like, I don't know. Some people will say, like, I didn't feel the spark on the first date. And I've had the spark and I've learned the hard way what that means. But I would love to talk about that experience and kind of what you coach people through to like be aware of and also like when to give it a second date and keep going.
Yeah, that's something I'm really passionate about. It's kind of become my unofficial motto is fuck the spark. And what I found was that I was coaching so many people and they would go on these good dates and they would have a good time. And then they'd say, I'm just not going to see him again. I would say, why? And they would say, I just didn't feel the spark. And I think that this is something in our culture around instant gratification, this feeling of, if I'm hungry, I can have Thai food here in 20 minutes. If I want to watch a movie from the 80s, I can get it on Netflix immediately. And we just want things to be easy and we want them to be instant. So when we go on a date, we're like, if I didn't feel it right away, why would I give it more time? And I just don't think that that's the right way to date. And I love this idea that I've done with my husband, who I've been with for 10 years, and I've coached my clients on, which is really going after the slow burn. And so it's like, if you're only chasing the super charismatic 6'5" guys, then you're missing out on some other people who may not be as sparky when you first meet them, but would make great long-term partners. And so many people, they have the spark and it starts out really hot and heavy. And then over time, it gets worse. And they have this pattern over and over again. And I'm like, maybe it's that you're focusing so much on the spark, you're ignoring other red flags, you're ignoring other character flaws. If you actually focus on someone who you get to know slowly over time and they grow on you, you might find the love of your life. And maybe he wasn't that sparky.
And so a slow burn, if someone was tracking sort of how they're feeling in their body with a slow burn, is the personal work that, we'll say a woman in this case, is the personal work that she would have to do would be to continue to check in and just kind of not negotiate, but like evaluate sort of, because I think there is a lot of inner work if you're going to be someone that used to like sparks and you're doing slow burn. So what kind of conversations can she be having with herself?
Yeah. So I think this is a great opportunity to journal. And I think the post-date 8 is a fun activity that people can do after each date to see how things change over time. So for us with a slow burn person, you might go on an initial date with them and be like, am I the most attracted to them of everyone I've ever been with? No, but like, is there something there that I'm curious to learn more about? Then after the second date, the third date, you keep feeling like they're growing on me. Oh, when they talked about their family, their face really lit up. When they talked about their work, I saw how passionate they are. And like, it's really impressive that they have this career, that they've created themselves, whatever it is. And so I think if you have zero attraction, you're not going to get from 0 to like enough to want to be with someone. But if you have some attraction, I think that you can train yourself to see that and then have that grow over time. Versus if you only go after the people where you immediately feel that spark, you're really going to miss out. And so I have this idea of the 3 myths of the spark. So the first one is that if you don't feel the spark, then it'll never grow. And that's not true. A lot of people have the spark grow over time. And that's why people end up with someone in their class or someone who lives in the same apartment building, someone who they work with, because they see them over time and it builds. The second myth is that if you have the spark, it's a good thing. And that's also not true. A lot of people give off the spark because they're really narcissistic, or
Trauma bond.
yes, or they play hot and cold. So it's like,
God.
you're feeling like the chemistry and the butterflies, but where you're actually feeling is the anxiety of not knowing if they're interested or not. And that can really drive you. Like, I think about guys that I dated before my husband, and I would like go on runs and just like think about them nonstop.
Oh, I
It was
know.
like I didn't need to listen to music because like I had like the drumbeat of their thoughts and their name in my head. And it's like at the time I was like, this is incredible. This is a crush. This is love. It's like, no, that was their
You're sprinting at a 10. You're like, this is amazing.
Right. Totally. It was like they were hot and cold with me. They were avoidant, and it was like triggering me. But like to me, I was like, oh,
Yes.
this is like
exciting.
so juicy. And so it's like, I
know.
like what you said. I do think people need to retrain them. And so I
Yeah.
think the work for people can also be saying, wow, I'm really having that anxious moment here. I'm really in it. I really feel distracted. Is this because I'm just so into them and my heart is beating? Or is this because they're not clear about their intentions and it's triggering something in me? And I think that the work is to, instead of running towards the red flags because you have that crush energy, actually running towards the green flags of someone who says, I really like you. I'm really interested in you. I want to get to know you more. Like, this was a great first date. Let's hang out again. And like, you might not be used to that because you're used to people who pull away, and that's your definition of love. But what would it look like for you to really pursue someone who's interested in you and who puts in the hard work?
I think that's a huge thing too, is, chemistry can happen and you can meet someone and have that chemistry because the trauma bonds are, physical, but it's like commitment. Like when a man is committed and they actually do what they say and they follow through and they actually show up, is such a different experience than just having that attraction that I think I've had to metabolize too. And I know a lot of women in our community have had to metabolize too. I'm curious if men experience the spark in the same way. Have you read any differences? Is there any research around that?
Yeah, I definitely hear about the spark from men and women.
Okay.
And it's definitely where men are like, I'll know it when I see it, or they expect a certain feeling on the first date. And I've had guys who say, I knew from the first second that I met my wife that I was going to marry her. But the data shows that only 11% of people said they feel love at first sight. So that's really why I try to put this out there to say that the spark can grow over time. And so we went through all the myths, right? So the first one is the spark can grow. The second one is, or the first one is that if you don't feel it, it can't grow. And no, it can. The second one is if you feel it, it must be a good thing. And the third one is if you have it, then the relationship is viable. And the truth is, a lot of relationships start with it and then they fizzle out. And so I think the work for people is to really train themselves. And so, kind of going back to your question about men versus women, there's this idea of the anxious avoidant loop. You're familiar with it, but for your audience who's not, it's that if you're anxious, your definition of love is that you're constantly going to be chasing someone, they're going to be pulling away, and that you have to kind of prove your value or keep yourself top of mind for them. And if you're avoidant, it's that somebody's going to smother you and take away your independence, so you need to pull away. And even though 50% of the population is secure, a lot of those secure people are already in relationships. So the dating pool is a lot of anxious and avoidant people dating each other, and they reinforce these patterns, right? So I'm anxious, I chase after you, you're avoidant, and you feel smothered by me, and then we go date back and forth. And for a lot of people, and I'm talking about myself, it was really when we broke out of this anxious avoidant loop and dated someone secure that we realized how different it could be. So if you've only ever tasted chocolate and you don't know that there's vanilla, you're just going to say everything is chocolate. But dating a secure person is like going to this different flavor. And so with my husband, when we met, I remember the first time we got into a fight over text, I was just like blowing his phone up, so angry, like pecking away, so mad at him. And then instead of just feeding into that pattern with me, he's like, oh, it sounds like you're really upset. We should talk about this in person. And it was
You're
like
"Excuse
an
me?"
explosion because it was like I was wired a certain way. And then that was the beginning of rewiring. And like, I think it's because like he's a great guy and his mom's a therapist and he does have high emotional intelligence. But it was like, if you just look at that as an example, it's like I would have kept going my whole life fighting that way until he was like, there's this different way to fight where we just like meet up in person, probably when you've cooled down and you can express yourself and I can express myself. And then with dating, it's like, if you've always chased the spark and then those people disappoint you, well, there is another way. And maybe it won't feel as exciting in the beginning, but it'll lead to more authentic relationships. It'll lead to higher integrity people. You won't just be looking for the person where like the trailer of the movie is so good. It's like, well, you're not marrying the trailer, like you're marrying the whole movie. So like it better be good like just after the beginning.
Yeah. I remember just having to like tune my nervous system where I'm like, my nervous system was so used to the up and down and the like, is he going to text me? And just kind of this unpredictability to predictability and stability and peace with my now husband. And I was like, at first, I clocked that as boring.
Totally.
And I was like, I don't know if this is it. And then I realized as that was the stability and structure I needed in order to go deeper, and to create actual like real excitement and thrill in relationship that was healthy rather than unhealthy.
How did you do that?
How
Because
did
I guess
do that?
so for anyone listening where they're like, okay, it feels boring, but I'm going to stick with it. Then how do I transition to creating excitement in the relationship now that we have that?
Yeah, so much of it was like kind of an in the moment clocking, like in my body, where I would have to take a moment and be like, okay, so we're in his living room on a Saturday. We're in the same room. He's reading a book. I'm, writing something or reading a book. This feels pretty simple, mundane, peaceful. I was someone who was like, let's plan a trip. Let's do a staycation. let's
totally.
let's
Story
do
of my
something
life.
exciting. And he's
Let's
like,
walk in Central Park.
he's like, babe, being in the same room with you, even though we're not like saying anything to each other, is like, I love this. Like, this is amazing. And I'm like, what part of me wants to like just stimulate us to show that we're in this like amazing relationship? And it was a training for me to be like, what aspects of our relationship are showing me and proving to me that it is safe and deep and exciting and helping me to grow? Because that was like the next level of me. It was like the future me calling me forward. Like, that is what we've always wanted. That's not what you saw necessarily
that's
growing
true.
up, but like that's what we have really wanted, and that's what he's providing. And so it was just like a slow retraining. And I remember we were long distance for a while, and when we would have our like weekends together or whatever, I would like want to plan all these things and make it the best thing ever. And he would always get a little uncomfortable because he's just like, I feel like you're putting a lot of pressure on these moments that like we're actually in the same place. He's like, I hope that we like have our whole lives together. We're going to do a lot of exciting things. He's like, but it's like these mundane moments that like are special,
Yeah.
and we get to like really kind of settle in together and not be so stimulated by like external things validating our relationship.
Yeah, I love so much of what you said. I think I just want to underline it for people that a lot of times when someone is secure, we code it as boring.
Yeah.
Because when they are predictable and they're reliable and they do what they say they will, it doesn't give us that same
Thrill.
response and thrill and anxiety coded as butterflies that we get from people who are less reliable. And so if you've spent your whole life chasing that high and that's your definition of love, of course this other thing is going to feel really different. And so I think just acknowledging that moment, and for people who want to make that transition, knowing it's going to feel a little uncomfortable in the position in the beginning because it's not what you're used to. And then I also really love what your husband said about just maybe from a place of anxiety, you were trying to like fill these weekends, or like, maybe you felt like, I want to be the fun girlfriend, or like, if we don't live in the same city, then when we're together, it has to be epic.
Yeah.
It seems like his version of it was, we're seeing if we're a good couple and if we should be together. So why don't we actually just spend quality time, just
do
the
life.
two of us, and do life and see, do we get together? Do we do well together when there's no external stimuli?
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think it's so interesting. It's like a lot of times on people's dating app profiles, they'll say, I'm a great +1 to a wedding because of this. And it's like, yeah, maybe you are really fun at karaoke, or you are really charming with somebody's parents. But at the end of the day, like that's not what you're marrying someone for. You're marrying them for like the Tuesday night ordering food, like the Sunday morning going to the park with your kid. And so if you've always filled your life with all of these other exciting things, then when it's just the two of you, you may not even know each other. And so I think, it sounds like your husband's very wise.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. I would love to talk about just best practices when you're dating, especially when it comes to communication. I think we'll probably talk about attachment styles a little bit, but how much texting is too much texting, not enough? How soon should you text someone after the first date? Because I think, with someone that's anxiously attached, it's like, I think the standard is so high of like, why didn't they text me an hour
I
after?
know.
But then there's value in space and breath between moments. So what do you think about that?
It's so funny. I feel like I'm always surprised how much texting comes up in conversations around dating. But if you think about modern society, we really spend so much time away from our partner texting them and like a lot less time in person. So it does make sense that texting kind of feels like it's a big part of our relationships. So I did some research on this at Hinge, and we have this concept called DBL, digital body language. And so just like physical body language is, how does the fact that I'm leaning back in my chair or whispering or having my arms crossed, how does that sort of tell you how I feel? And digital body language is these unconscious kind of subtext to your messages. So people are very attuned to them. So there are things like, how long did it take you to respond to my message? How long is your message? Are you asking me questions? Are you giving one word answers? And so a lot of times people aren't aware of their own digital body language, and they're either coming on way too strong or they seem not interested.
Yeah.
And so I don't have the perfect solution, but it's like early on in dating, people almost need to say, like, what kind of texter are you? Because there's so many missed opportunities. So for example, I hear this from a lot of women. Let's say like a woman who's a doctor and she's like, I don't have my phone out all day. Like it would actually be like unsanitary for me to do that. So I put my phone away. But then people think I'm not interested because they're used to girls that text all the time, and they think that those messages mean that you're close. Or I hear from guys who are like, people expect me to always be available, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of miscommunication there. So I think that if you like to text a lot, you need to be with someone who can meet kind of the bare minimum that you want. Like I text way more than my husband, but I feel like he at least like can keep up with some of it. Other things that I would say are that people really should not make assumptions about text and try to just have those conversations. I know
Yeah.
it seems hard, but I think learning how to say things like, hey, I haven't heard from you in a few days. The story in my head is like that you met someone or you're less interested, like what's going on for you? And kind of before you jump to assumptions, maybe letting somebody in on like what you're thinking, or giving people a heads up, like, hey, I have a big work project and I'm not going to be as available for the next few days, but I don't want you to think that anything has changed. And so I kind of wish we didn't have to have these conversations, because like, who cares about texting? Like life should be about the in-person moments, but I don't think that's realistic. I think in reality, a lot of courtship and a lot of relationships like are mitigated over text. And so we have to figure out how to express what we actually want and who we actually are, knowing that it might be misinterpreted.
This is kind of a personal question, but I think our girls will relate to. I sometimes am curious about intention in dating, where on one hand, I want to have the intention to just enjoy myself and have fun, and I feel like that feels good for me and it feels like less pressure. But then on the other hand, I do want to be married with children. I want to be married again and I want to have children. So what do you say for people of how they should approach dating? Should we approach it lightly or with intention?
Yeah, I definitely struggled with this one when I was dating, because I am a very goal-oriented person. And so it was like from the beginning, I'd be like, okay, we like each other. Like, when's the next time we can hang out? Like, what are your long-term goals? Like, where do you want to live? Do you want to have kids? And it's like, that is just sort of part of my energy, that I'm kind of like, let's jump to it. But like that turns people off. Like people don't like that energy. Like they want to have a slow connection. They want to feel like you're doing a dance where you both take steps towards each other. They want to feel like there's flirtation and romance and erotic energy. And so like for anyone who kind of has that feeling, like I so relate to you. Like I'm like, let's jump to the part where we're married. But that's not really how it works. And you can't just say like, if we're going to take these steps, why can't we just run through them? It doesn't really work. And so I think first is just acknowledging that like, it's a very profound thing for two strangers to meet and choose each other, and that you have to give that some space. And then the second thing is that you can keep the levity, you can keep the humor, you can keep the flirtation while also being an intentioned dater. And so I think what that looks like is on your profile saying, I'm really looking to, find, I wrote this with one of my clients, like I want to find somebody to combine my bookshelves with. It's cute. It's like, I love reading, but it's also saying like, I'm here to meet someone long term. And so I think finding a way on your profile on Hinge, there's a dating intention section. You can say, short-term relationship, short-term but open to long-term relationship, life partner. And you can use that and add like backstory to say like what you're looking for. And I think looking at other people's dating intentions is a good way to do that. And then on an early date, you could say something like, I was married, it didn't work out. I'm really looking for long-term partnership. I definitely see myself being a mom in the next few years. What about you? What are you looking for? I don't think you're painting them into a corner. I don't think you're being demanding. You're just sharing like, this is my story. What's yours? And it gives them space to do that. And so I'd say like, keep the levity, keep the fun, keep the romance, because people do not feel like you're hiring for a role of spouse and trying to fill them into a slot. But you can also be really clear from the beginning about what you're looking for. And at Hinge, we've done a lot of research on this, that it's much better to be clear about what you want, because you'll turn the right people on, but maybe even more importantly, you'll turn the wrong people off. And so each date you go on is more likely to turn into something, because you're going on dates with people who are also looking for that, as opposed to crossing your fingers and saying, well, we never talked about it, but I hope they want that too.
I think that's such a good one. And I was on the apps for a little bit, and I think that was, I don't know if I read it somewhere, it was just an unlock where I was like, because I think at first when I got on the apps, I was like, I just want to make this I want everyone to want me. I was like, I want to be the widest net.
Yeah.
And then it's like when you cast the widest net, you have to sift the most, you have to process the most, you have to sort of kind of filter through everything. And there is such a power to being a lot more specific and truthful and honest, and just like really getting more clear. And you will have less, but it's like going to be so much less conversation and negotiation in your head if you're more clear with that. My last question that I had for you that I would love to know your thoughts on. So when we're talking about sort of the gap, the masculinity crisis and the gap between men and women, what is the place where women can support men but not be their mothers or not be their therapists? Like, how can we help them be better for us emotionally, relationally, whatever, but not like become a place where we're now the new source of their need for approval?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the thing you said before that, which is that it makes sense. It's like when you were getting out of a relationship and going on the apps, you were kind of looking for validation, and it's fun to have people want you.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I'm saying like that's really normal. It's like the first night that I ever downloaded an app, I like spent 6 hours on it, being like, I can't believe it. Like there is like
I remember telling my friends, I was like, I'm killing it.
Yeah, I think that's so natural. There's such a dopamine rush, and it's like, who doesn't want that? But I think for people looking for relationships, you have to move from the attention stage to the connection stage. And so it's like, of course, I want to know the maximum number of people that like think I'm pretty. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a relationship, you can't go on a date with all those people. You need to go on a date with people that are values aligned with you and looking for the same thing as you. And so it's like, I completely get why you did that. And also it's like the next stage looks different.
Yes. And I think even being aware enough to acknowledge that, it kind of like, okay, in my process, like, what am I doing right now? What do I want? I just want to know that I'm still wanted. And then it's like, now, okay, I can pass that
after a
into
long-term relationship.
For sure.
You kind of like are like, who am I?
Thank you, ladies.
Hello.
Thank you. Instagram likes wasn't enough. I needed more. Okay. How do we be with men? How do we support men?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, just acknowledging that this is a moment where things are changing, that like we're really catching up with the fact that women are in the workplace and women are making more money and men need to do more than just providing. And I think just like acknowledging that this moment feels hard. And I think that when things get a little fuzzier, it can be really hard to know, like, how am I supposed to show up as a woman and how is he supposed to show up as a man? And then I think one of the biggest things that women can do is the piece that we talked about when a man is more vulnerable and shows this emotional intelligence that we say we've been wanting, to not shame them. Because what's going to happen is they're going to try it out with you. And if you shame them, then they might not do it with the next person. And so in my research, there was a story that really stuck with me where this guy said that on, a third or fourth date, he shared with a woman that his mother had committed suicide and like how this had impacted his life. And then afterwards, she texted him and she's like, I don't want to see you again. Like, I'm not here to process your emotional labor. I'm not here to do your emotional labor for you. And it's like, that story just makes me so sad because he wasn't asking her to do emotional labor. He was like, you want to know me? This is part of my story. This is part of who I am. And she was interpreting that maybe she'd heard it on TikTok that like everyone needs to do their emotional labor. And it's like, you heard something on TikTok that you don't understand. And now you're shaming someone for opening up to you.
Yeah.
Like you missed a chance to be with that person, but you also maybe changed how this person is going to show up on future dates. Like we're all in this ecosystem. And so I think it's really understanding that just as men were taught that there's only one way to be a man, and it was to be, you know, very masculine and strong and your provider. I also think women were taught the same thing about men. And that when they see somebody who becomes more open and vulnerable, it can sometimes trigger something in them where they feel less safe. They're like, that's not how my dad was. That's not how Prince Eric was in The Little Mermaid. And it's also for women to understand that we've had 50 years of getting to be more than just one type of person, and that there's a lot of ways to be a woman. And that if we're now in a moment where there's going to be more than one type of way to be a man, we also have to make room for that.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. I really love that point. This was so helpful.
So good. Yeah. I think last question for me is just, you know, I think a lot of people are on the apps and sometimes they take breaks, I guess. What would you recommend as just like good hygiene for using the apps? And like, how do you view the apps? Is it a tool? Is it like we're in a modern world? So I think they're a part of the conversation. So.
Yeah, I like the way you frame that. So yes, I definitely think they're a tool and they can be part of a portfolio of ways that you meet people. So just because you're on the app doesn't mean you don't want to be open to introductions or meeting people at a coffee shop. So I think people are like so intense about this. It's like, I'm not dating right now. I'm like, if what you mean is you're not currently on the apps because you're traveling a lot, like you could still have the identity of being a dater and being open. You don't have to like assign that label to yourself. And I think with the apps, it's all about dating sustainably. So if you're like, I download the apps, I date a bunch of people, I get burned out, I delete the apps, and then a few months later, I download them again. I'm like, that's just a worse strategy than like going on enough dates that you keep momentum, but not so many that you get burned out. And so what is an amount of interaction with a dating app, with the number of dates you go on that feels like you could do it for a while and not like so hard that you burn yourself out. That being said, people should take breaks whenever they want. Just make sure you have a plan to like start over again.
Maybe I should get back on. We'll see. This was beautiful.
Yeah,
this was
thank you.
powerful. You're such an amazing, clear speaker.
Yeah,
and I know the
truly.
work you've done has helped so many women, and especially so many of our
And
women
men.
still see, men too, feel seen and heard and understood. And I think having this conversation is so important. So thanks for taking the breath of those trolls on for all
thank you.
of us. Appreciate it so much. It was so good to have you in studio.
Yeah.
Where can people find and connect with you? Tell us about your books too.
Great. Yeah. So my book is How to Not Die Alone, and I read the audiobook, and people can follow me on Instagram, and I write a weekly newsletter. People can find it on my website.
Amazing. Wasn't reading the audiobook. Did you like that process?
I really liked it.
I loved it.
It was fun. It was like a
best.
little performance in a studio.
Yes, that's
It
what I
was
felt. It was like you can
so
bring life
fun.
to the words. Like I had so much fun.
It was great.
reading ours. Yeah,
It's a blast.
it's good. Amazing. Okay, guys, we'll see you soon. We love
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Logan. Again, it's Logan Ury, and her first book is How to Not Die Alone. And you can find her on Instagram at her name, Logan Ury. It's Logan Ury. And her website is loganury.com.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you have not gotten our new book, Almost 30, A Definitive Guide to a Life You Love for the Next Decade and Beyond, we would love for you to pick it up, whether online or in store at Barnes & Noble, Target, Amazon, and other places. We're so grateful for the response thus far, and we're just hopeful that this guide will support you through any season of change. We love you guys. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
We love you guys. Bye.